Final link in the chain about the audio side of my computer setup is the loudspeakers, one of which I've got here. I've just brought it out from the back. Now, there's quite a long, probably boring story about how I came to getting these, so I'm not going to bore you with that. If anyone is particularly interested, ask me in the comments and I'll tell you. But long story short, I've not had any proper loudspeakers for some time now. I was actually using a TV soundbar with a subwoofer attached to listen to music and to work with music, which wasn't ideal, but that's what I had, so that's what I work with. As I mentioned in the previous video, I also have the option of using my headphones if I wanted to hear something in more detail. I'll speak about that in a moment. Now, with loudspeakers, when you're actually producing music and working with music rather than just listening to music, the requirements are slightly different. These speakers are what are known as studio monitor speakers, and they are different from your typical hi-fi speakers, or as I've just mentioned, your TV soundbar. With the hi-fi speakers and soundbars, they're normally specifically designed to make things sound better. So if you're watching a film or listening to your favourite CDs or something like that, then domestic ordinary speakers, they are designed to make that sound as good as it can, for obvious reasons, because you want to hear it as sounding as good as it can. Or with films, or when you're playing games, you want to really hear those booms of explosions and things like that accentuated. So that's the reason why there's a difference. With studio monitors, they don't have that type of flavour built into them. The good studio monitors sound very neutral. They have what you call a flat frequency response, and they are what you call transparent. So the idea is that you can hear everything that you're doing very clearly. Now, if I was to put these alongside some similar priced and similar quality hi-fi loudspeakers, I strongly imagine to most people the hi-fi loudspeakers would sound better to the ear, because that's what they're designed to do. These aren't designed to do that. The way these are designed is that the idea is that they can actually pick out any problems or things in your sound that you might want to address, and they make them stand out because they're not trying to hide anything. So when you're producing music, as I've said before, I'm not a professional music producer or mixing engineer, but to be able to hear what's going wrong is the main part of the battle. I don't want speakers that are going to flatter me and, oh, that sounds fantastic, that sounds brilliant, because the speakers are making it sound that way. What I want to do is try and focus on anything that needs changing or editing or adjusting. So a neutral, flat, transparent speaker is what you want for that type of work. So that's why I've decided finally recently to upgrade to these things. Now, these particular ones, again, I bought these myself. I keep stressing I'm not affiliated with any particular company. These speakers themselves are by a company called MACKIE. The model of these is a TAPCO S5. If you want to look it up, I'll put a link or something down as well, so you can have a look at the details and specs on them, as I will with everything. And they've been absolutely brilliant since I got them, and I've appreciated the qualities that they've brought and the extra enhancement they've brought to my ability to work with music. On a simple level, I'll keep the tech out of it as much as I can. It's a two-way speaker system, so we've got the main speaker here, which is sort of your mid-range and woofer speaker. That's one of the ways. At the top we've got a tweeter that deals with the high frequency parts of the sound, and that deals with the lower and mid frequency parts of the sound. Don't want to say much more about it than that. These are described as active loudspeakers. What that means is, active doesn't mean they're going to be running around the room when you're not looking. It means that they've got an amplifier built in, so I don't need to have a separate amplifier to power these speakers. If you think about your traditional hi-fi setup, you might have your CD player, your other bits and bobs. You might even have an old tape player if you've got some tapes, records for vinyl, they're coming back in now, and at some point you'll have an amplifier. They call it a receiver nowadays, which has got the amplifier built into it, and then you connect to your loudspeakers in your living room. This has got the amplifier built in, so I can just connect these straight to my audio interface. I don't need a separate amplifier, and this does everything for me. That's about as much as there is to say about it in terms of how it works. Just real quick, spin it around. These are quite heavy things because you've got the amplifiers built in to them, so they're a bit heavier than what you might normally find. On the back of it, if you can see most of it, we've got the thin bit is a heatsink, like I described before when I was talking about a PC, because it's got the amplifier in. Amplifiers create heat, all amplifiers do that, so that allows the heat to escape from the box. And we've got quite a lot of connections on here. There's 3 different ways I can connect to these speakers. I've got a jack plug input, which is like your normal, similar to your guitar cable type shape. I've got XLR, that's the best way to do it. That's a balanced cable, so if I was at a professional mixing desk, like you see in a studio, that's what I'd use. I don't have that, so the way that I'm using is on these RCA or phono connectors, which just plug left and right, one into this speaker, one into the other side speaker, and I'm good to go. You might be able to make out, I don't know until I look at it on editing, there's quite a few little switches, tiny little switches, and a dial on here to change the settings on the speaker, so that I can, the reason for that is that I can set it up to the environment that I'm in. One thing when you're using loudspeakers for music production is, one of the most important things is the actual room that you've got, because all rooms sound different, and there's nothing that you can do about that without changing the room. So if you look at pictures of a recording studio, you might see all kinds of funny shapes, foam bits stuck on the walls and ceilings and things like that. That's all designed to make the room better for working with audio, basically to stop echo and things bouncing off walls. And not everyone can do that. I can't do that in this room for various reasons. So having these things available on the loudspeaker is super useful for me to be able to adjust them so I can get the best quality and transparent sound I want. The biggest thing that I would mention is, if you look back at my my other video where you could see my position of my desk in its entirety with the speakers, is these things are quite close to the wall at the back. Now that isn't best practice. Normally you would not want your loudspeakers to be that close to a wall. That would create what they describe, I think, as a bass trapping effect, and makes the low end of the sound, the bass, sound a lot noisier and louder than what it should do. But with the adjustments on the speakers, I can tweak that out of it, because the way that I'm set up, I don't have the space to have these things further from the wall. I mean, moving my desk out, moving my chair position out, and it just doesn't work for me. In a perfect world, yes, I'd do that, but it's not a perfect world, and this is what I've got, so I'm grateful to have those little adjustments on the loudspeakers. So that's what we've got with the speakers. A lot of people think they're simple things, but I don't really want to complicate it, but they're not as simple as what it sounds. But the main takeaway from these is they're active, so the amplifier is built in, and the fact that they are studio monitors, not hi-fi speakers. So the design is intended to make it so that I can hear any faults or any flaws in the work that I'm doing, rather than for the speakers to make it sound better and nice when you just sat there chilling out with your glass of red wine on a Sunday afternoon, listening to your favourite CD or watching a film. They're not designed for that. If that's what you want to get hi-fi loudspeakers for working with music, studio monitors, let you hear the faults and flaws in your sound. So that's the final part of the audio. I'll have a look at some other elements as we go along on this playlist. Enjoy.